You're listening to This Week in E-Commerce, the Ecom Nation podcast. Dive into the top online retail headlines with your hosts, Paul Waddy and Mal Chia. Let's load up the cart. This Week in E-Commerce, episode 14. I am Mal Chia, and with me is Paul Waddy.
Good afternoon, Mal. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Okay. I'm okay.
Do you want to tell everyone why you're just okay? Or do you want to just leave that out of the pod?
I'm dieting. I wouldn't say it's a healthy diet. It's a 10 day blitz. But you know what? I will say to you, Mal, that it works. I've dropped 3 kilos in 5 days, but you know, I don't. This is not health advice because I don't feel very well. So, yeah, that's me. But I feel fine now and ready to kick start into some exercise next week and get into the silly season.
Yep, fantastic. Well, it is very much the silly season right now. I was just talking with a client just then about Christmas and Christmas promotions and bringing them forward because everyone's buying now instead of December. And then I was like, oh my God, we've got 6 weeks left of the year, 6 or 7 weeks left of the year.
So what happens if everyone keeps bringing things forward each year? Does that mean we just end up being on sale all year?
Well, we talked about this before, that we may be on the cusp of like the perpetual sale. Because that's what people are expecting now. Like you just expect your brands to go on sale. There's a couple of brands which I'm very closely, I'm across quite closely, and they've just been on sale all year, and now they're doing Black Friday, and the sale's exactly the same, and nothing has changed. It's because you've been on sale all year. I don't really feel for them because they were budgeting for like a huge November, but they've been on sale all year.
Well, I wonder if I know who you're talking about.
You probably do. And it's one of those risks that, if you keep doing it over and over again, people just expect you to go deeper and deeper and deeper. What comes next after an up to 80% off sale? It's like an up to 90% off sale. And then there's like we're just going to start giving most things away for free sale.
Yeah, and then, as we said last week, all of a sudden in Jan, Feb, you start saying we're superior quality, higher material. Yeah, you start spinning that story again. So look, get your shovels out, keep digging those holes, and or better still, dig yourselves out of those holes and try not to discount too much.
Yeah, look, I got to say, it's been actually very refreshing. I've been on a few calls the last few weeks, different podcasts and things like that. I know you did an interview recently as well about Black Friday. And it seems like people are either in two camps. They're either really excited about it or they're kind of just like over it and just like, we're just doing this because we have to, but we just want this thing to be over.
Yeah, look, fair enough. Look, and I'm being a bit critical. It has been a tough year. It doesn't mean you're bad at business if you're on sale. It has been a tough year, and there are great businesses that are carrying a bit too much stock, and that's fine. But I think let's not be discounting too much next year. Let's make it the year of great brands and great products.
That's right. Get back to basics. Now, one brand which has not been doing very well is Optus, and we are going to be talking about Optus's, shall we say, their minor incident this week. But before we do that, we are going to talk about another brand which was a bit of a darling of the last couple of years, which is Culture Kings. So Culture Kings, as most people know, they sold to AKA Brands, which is a holding company in the US, a few years back. And then promptly went on to open a really epic store in Las Vegas, which was really, really impressive. Some of the videos of what goes on in that store, they've got this gigantic wall of hats and videos and indoor basketball court and things like that. It's really quite epic. They've reported that that while the US business, particularly the Las Vegas store, has absolutely thrived in the last year, in the last quarter, the Australian online business, and online and bricks and mortar business has declined by 9.6% over that time.
Yeah, I'm just reading that now. So let's break that down. So mixing, AKA Brands, the parent brands, so net sales fell 9.6% to 140.8 million US. While the net loss significantly widened to 70.4 million, so that's in the 3 months. So that's AKA Brands. And then it says gross margin slid to 55.4 and adjusted EBITDA plunged 49.1% to 4.7 million. I'm not sure if I'm 100% following that. So it's sort of talking about a positive EBITDA and then a negative one just before that. I'm not sure if I'm mixing up AKA brands versus Culture Kings.
Culture King.
But nonetheless, what's interesting for me there is the company attributed a decline in its gross margin to the targeted discounting implemented in Culture Kings Australia and a higher returns rate. So it's exactly what we've just been talking about. Now, the word targeted discounting is like, feels a bit funny, like oh no, it was targeted. We meant to lose that money. Nonetheless, Culture King's a great brand, amazing success story that Simon Beard started from the markets and absolutely killed it. And the lesson again here is just gross margins, like discounting hurts brand. If you're a publicly listed company, you've got to stand up and say, hey, the reason we lost money is because we largely put down discounting. That's an update to the stock market over there. So again, just a caution there. And then the returns is interesting. So I don't know why their returns rate would increase if they've changed their policy. I remember hearing that they've always refunded, I think. So that's interesting. I don't know why returns would be up, but they're accrediting their bad-ish news to discounting and returns largely now.
What I thought was interesting is that the comment that this is going to lead to a change in their operations in Australia specifically, where they're going to be looking to right-size their inventory to make way for product newness and rapidly transitioning Culture Kings to a data-driven, short lead time merchandising cycle. So that last statement, data-driven, short lead time merchandising cycle, so that's just fast fashion. And right-sizing inventory, we just need to clear out a whole lot of stuff because we're just way over-ordered.
Well, that's discounting.
That's just discounting, right?
Yeah. So let's read between the lines there. We've got a discount to get rid of stock that hasn't moved. We've got to improve our lead times and hold less inventory and bring in new stock. Yep. So yes, that is literally turning over your stock quicker. It sounds like they're 1, clearing inventory, 2, ordering less, 3, ordering more frequently.
Yep.
Fine.
But ordering from manufacturers who can provide things much faster as well, which again, it's fast fashion. So,
and it's often generic, isn't it? Because you're often buying from stock and so on, and shorter lead times.
Yeah, so I was curious about like you said before, they're a fantastic brand. They are still the preeminent streetwear cultural icon in Australia. Like when you go to the high street, you can't help but see people walking around with their Culture Kings bags, which are very they do stand out quite a lot. But whether continuing down this path of continuing to discount and things like that is going to hurt the brand in the long term. Whether they are going to continue to be a cool brand if you're perpetually on discount, which goes back to our earlier point.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I'm not sure what the percentage of private label versus brands is in that business, but I guess they carry Jordans and Nike and all the big brands, and even if they don't want to discount, which I think sounds like they need to, but when your competitors are, you've got to, because they pop into Google Shopping and you're like, man, they're on sale again because they're closing down. And again, that's kind of, for these multi-brand retailers, like worth thinking about private label a little bit and other ways it can differentiate. But this is again why it's a race to the bottom. Yeah,
I think Culture Kings do quite a bit of private label. From what I understand, several of those the brands which they push are actually their own brands, which is great. Good on them. But we'll see what that does over the next 12 to 18 months. And again, just looking at the long term effects of constant discounting, what that does to your brand, whether that does erode brand value. I say yes, but only time will tell. Interesting though that the Vegas store was very successful, which is great to see, because it kind of segues into the next thing I want to talk about, which is Scentre Group, aka the owners of Westfield, have reported a 7.4 increase in customer visitation for the first 9 months of 2023. Which goes to show that, as we come out, we are still very much in this post-pandemic. I don't know how long we can keep saying post-pandemic for, since we are kind of 2 years out of lockdown now. But it really feels that, people have just gone back and are now still continuing to embrace these physical interactions of actually getting out of the house and belonging with other people. That as much as like online is like where we're spending a large chunk of time as well, we still seek those human connections. We do want to go to the shops. We do want to do things to, whether we're just browsing or walking around or just interacting. It's just interesting to note that, you can see this with a lot of the brands we talked about, whether it be Princess Polly, an AKA brand, which also did really well with their US launch, or a brand like LSKD, which is continuing to open 8 now retail stores around Australia, I believe more, and Oz Hair and Beauty, which have opened 5, which are going to be opening their 5th very soon in New South Wales. That bricks and mortar, as we keep saying, still continues to have a place. And this data just continues to show that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Budgie Smuggler opened a new Manly store, exceeding expectations. There's no doubt. People, I guess I would caution that, because foot traffic is up 7%, doesn't necessarily mean sales are. But there are enough good news stories. In fact, probably we know that retail sales are probably down quarter on quarter, but there are still good news stories out there. And I think retail and omnichannel is a great place to be, particularly if you can provide an experience. Culture King's Las Vegas store is off its head. So obviously they're providing an experience. Budgie Smuggler's the same. It's a great experience to go in and touch and feel, and helps you try things on. And if you can, pair in with that click and collect and really engaging store managers that are almost community managers, then I think, and you mentioned LSKD, I think you can absolutely make it work. Am I about to go and take out a couple of leases? Absolutely not. But if you're out there and you're doing well, good luck to you.
Well, it goes back to the concept of physical and mental availability. I'm finding that it's Friday afternoon. It's getting harder for me to talk. I've been talking all day. But physical and mental availability is so important when you think about brands. And I think those brands which are physically available, which you walk past routinely and you see them over and over again, you're more likely to remember them when you're in a buying scenario. So even though you may not actually sell many products there, the fact that people are walking past it over and over again means that you think about them. Same as like JB Hi-Fi. Like I gotta say, I still buy a lot of my electronic goods from JB Hi-Fi online, despite the fact I can have my selection from anything. I just go straight to JB Hi-Fi because they have physical and mental availability in my head because I see the brand all the time. Hence, they're more mentally available when I'm ready to buy.
That's interesting.
Even though I can't walk into the store, I'm still going to buy from them online because I know and trust the brand and I just see them all the time. In the same way that I feel that if you are walking past a retailer over and over again, in a mall, in a high street, you see that name, you recognize that name, so you're more likely to have a positive association for that brand.
Yeah, it's true. It's an impression, isn't it? And we're always talking about, getting impressions, and they are giant billboards that probably get thousands of impressions each day, depending on where they are. And obviously there's trust. When you've got a store, people automatically think that you're a little bit, a bigger player than you probably are, or they can go in and if there's any problems, speak to a real person and so on. So I think there's a bit of a flex in having a store as well. It's probably quite helpful.
Yeah, I think it's and it's always useful as well if you do have a store to then look at what the uplift is to your online metrics. That still the online store might be your breadwinner, to see whether when you open those bricks and mortar stores, whether it actually has an uplift in those markets. Every time which I've done this before and I've opened a store, I always look at the metrics to see whether, there's been actually any uplifts to the, in the areas around that. And I always see an uplift. So when you open a store in Perth, next thing you know, Perth sales and Perth awareness goes up slightly. More people are searching for the brand. So not to say again, like everyone should rush out and open up a store because apparently they're 99.1% occupied at Westfield right now.
Come on.
That's what the data's saying. 99.1% occupancy.
They're giving them away. They're giving them away if that's the case.
Well, there's no mention about collecting rents.
Sorry. That's because they don't let you out of the leases.
Well, there's no mention about collecting rents. They just talk about the occupancy, okay. Whether it's paid or complimentary. I'm unsure.
No
but
problem.
I think.
Okay. Well done.
There you go.
Well done, Centre Group.
Yeah. No, people are still going out and about. People are still going to malls. I will probably not set foot in a mall or a shopping centre between now and Christmas, just because I don't like it.
I bet you I know one that you'll step foot into. You will definitely step foot into a retail premises in an airport.
That is very true.
And they're great centres.
They are.
You're
They are.
always
And
there.
look, I had a really great conversation with the head of marketing from Brisbane Airport about how that whole experience is transforming and how they're actually using data now to actually inform what the retail offerings are, because they're able to match up your parking. If you pre-book parking, they are able to match that data up with what you're doing around the store, which time you're coming in, when you leave. So I would actually say make some guesses around what your behavior is.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, I know.
Yep.
Yeah, airports are often good little centres.
Yeah, well, I say I don't often walk around the airports. I just
You sit in the lounge.
check in. I go straight to the lounge. I
Yeah.
make a beeline for the lounge, and that's it.
Fair
So,
enough.
and then I'm there until they call my flight.
Same.
All right. We are also going to talk. It would be remiss of us to go this week without talking about one of the big stories, which is Optus and their epic fail. I hope no one listening is a Optus customer. I hope you've got reception back for one, so you can actually listen to this.
I'm an Optus customer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How did you survive
yesterday?
yesterday?
Okay, so here's the thing. So I'm Optus on my mobile, and so at home I was on SMS. What do you call it? SOS, and at home my internet is on Telstra, so I was able to send WhatsApps and all of that, and call people via WhatsApp. But when I had to leave the house and go to work, I was uncontactable. And interestingly, the first thing that my Uber said, and I had to stand inside my house to book the Uber and then walk out, and he was furious. My Uber said, well, I've lost 3 hours. He goes, I had to go home, swap my SIM card with my wife, who was on someone else, and he was really upset. And I was like, yeah, fair call. And he said, are they gonna reimburse me that lost 3 hours? I said, no, I don't work there. I don't know, but that's a really good question. I can't even get through on the call center. So good luck getting reimbursed for your work for 3 hours. But the learning for me was when he, said, I got my wife's card. I was like, I'm going to get a backup SIM. And if that had been my home internet as well, yeah, I would have been screwed.
You need a burner phone, Paul. It's like Paul's stash of burner phones.
Yeah, I could get a burner phone. That's not a bad idea. But I thankfully was out at a client who was also not on Optus. And I kind of was like, I was like, my wife was really upset. She's at home. I think she had an important phone call. She couldn't make it. So, man, it was really, really terrible and just not good enough. Really poor. I saw some lady didn't get to say goodbye to her dying mum because they couldn't get through to her. Man, that's unforgivable.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, Optus is a utility. Telecommunications is utility, and there is an expectation of performance. But what really struck me the most, was the lack of compassion and empathy, I think, with Optus's response. That it took them until midday or maybe even like later in the afternoon before they even acknowledged it.
Yep. And the
website didn't actually have any update.
The
CEO
apology
didn't actually come out and say
the
anything.
apology was late as well. There was it was like, really? Like, I just think, I hope that it bites them on the ass because it was handled so poorly, and people have been hammering these telcos for their lousy customer service for a long time. And mate, I hope people vote with their feet because that's just not okay. Like people literally couldn't get to say goodbye to loved ones, and they're just like, oh, yeah, it happens, and poor, really poor.
Yeah. Look, I think the response though from the CEO was like a masterclass in how not to do crisis communications. First of all, there's 3 rules to crisis communications. Number 1 is that you acknowledge the problem. Number 1 is that you put the most senior person forward. Number two is you acknowledge the problem, and number 3 is that you overcorrect. You overcorrect for whatever the issue is. In Optus's case, yes, they put the CEO in front, but only after things had ground to a halt.
Yes.
Like Melbourne trains couldn't operate because they operate on the Optus network, so they couldn't stop. And you can imagine from a retail point of view, e-commerce, since this is what we're all about, suddenly you've lost 20% of people, or maybe 30% of people who are on Optus networks who suddenly can't access your website. So that's a significant chunk of revenue which you're suddenly down for, and people unable to shop, unable to do things. Maybe they might come back later, maybe they might not. Who knows? But also happening during like the busiest time of the year as well. So on Wednesday, I know of at least 3 brands who launched their Black Friday sales that day. So they would have lost 30% of like that initial peak which they were expecting. And the response was that that it was a network issue, a network issue which cascaded, and there was nothing they could do about it. Which in this day and age just really is just unbelievable that would happen, and that couldn't be resolved much faster. But the response has showed no empathy, would barely acknowledge that there was an issue. It just said that, hey, we're normally really great, but oops, we made a mistake. Was in essence, I'm trying to find the actual words here.
Did you see her mock the barber? When the barber couldn't accept FPOS or couldn't do whatever in North Sydney, and she said her comment was, "I'm disappointed that a barber couldn't do haircuts today. That seems like one of the few things you can do without connectivity." Well, no, because it's powering your FPOS device, and like but that's like so out of touch. And I just think these people like just sitting there in these like Optus, which is huge empire. I really wonder how they would go starting a business as an entrepreneur, where you actually have to win the trust of customers from nothing. And I just think they would fail miserably. So that's embarrassing.
Well, it'll be interesting because this is not the first crisis which Optus have undergone this year. Earlier this year, there was obviously the cyber attack and the data breach. Sorry, that was late last year, which apparently affected the brand value. Took $1.2 billion off the brand value of Optus, which is quite a significant chunk of change. And now compounded by this, I wonder whether how many people are going to be thinking about switching. And I think this is significantly worse than the data breach, because data breaches happen all the time to many different companies. They happen to governments, they happen to public institutions, they happen to everyone. But in this case, to quote Jurassic Park, you had one job. you had one job to keep your network up and running.
Keep shit running.
Yeah, exactly. So you think about that, about the importance of this, and why you all need, like everyone, needs to be very cognizant of that, about the value which you're providing customers, and making sure that if you're unable to provide that value, you got to be upfront with it. You got to move fast on it. Which is actually some advice that I gave someone yesterday about Black Friday, that if you do think that you're going to be late with fulfilling your orders, be proactive. Don't wait a week until you're snowed under. You got to get out in front. You got to get out in front and let people know that your orders are going to be late.
Yeah,
otherwise people
do the right thing, and generally that's the best course of action. But yeah, I think that's good advice.
Well, I think that's actually a really good one. That if you're ever in doubt, just do the right thing, and you'll probably be better than the opposite if you did the opposite. Yeah, I think if you put the customer at the center, and this applies to Optus, this applies to retail, this applies to everyone really, like any business, is that if you put the customer front and center and think about what's best for the customer, it's hard to ever go wrong. Yeah, you may lose some points of margin here and there, but generally you always end up in a pretty good place.
The founder of Zappos, Tony Shea, always put I'm not going to get it right here, but quote him verbatim is, customer satisfaction always comes first, even at the expense of short-term profits.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zappos is a great example, where Amazon bought their culture, paid $1 billion, and by today's standards, they picked up Zappos pretty cheap, I think, but they bought that whole culture of happiness, of just delivering happiness, which is the name of Tony Hsieh's book, where the whole thing is about, let's go over and beyond, above and beyond. And there were cases where they were accepting refunds, if I remember rightly, for shoes which someone didn't even buy from there.
They used to pay staff to leave. Like, we don't think you're working out here. Would you like some money to please leave? So yeah, it's whatever. Genius.
Yeah. Great brand. May Tony rest in peace.
Absolutely.
Well, Paul, before we wrap up for today, anything which our listeners need to be aware of or keeping their eyes on?
No, I think my point of view, everyone's sort of battening down the hatches, for Black Friday, and I hope everyone has a great sale if it's kicking off next week, and then has a plan to bounce back strongly straight afterwards. What about you, Mel?
Look, similar vibes. I'd probably say in terms of things to watch out for, look out in December. Paul and I will be doing our December special end of year webinar, which we're going to record and turn into an episode of This Week in E-commerce, where we are going to recap our 2023 predictions. All the things we predicted at the start of the year, and we are going to make some new ones for 2024.
Yep.
Which I'm telling you about for the very first time. So
you are. I was pretending I knew about it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'm preparing for that. Yeah, that'll be good. Okay, let's do that.
Fantastic. All right, Paul. Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember, if you do like this podcast, please recommend it to someone else. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a comment. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely.
And keep listening.
Yep.
Have a great
See you
weekend.
guys.